Our story commences with Min Jun, the heroine, realizing her dream of opening a food truck. She felt immense joy at this achievement. As she waited expectantly for customers, a mysterious window materialized before her, announcing her awakening as a food truck owner, a hidden class she was quite surprised to discover. Eager to understand her newfound abilities, she began to explore the skills she had gained. In Minjin's world, 20 years prior, a tower known as the dungeon had appeared, leading to the formation of fractures. During that era, people with extraordinary powers, called the awakened or hunters, began to emerge in large numbers. These brave individuals embarked on perilous expeditions into the dungeon, confronting monsters, and ultimately restoring peace, although at the cost of countless hunter lives. Later, Minjin was suddenly teleported into a dungeon and immediately found herself under attack by terrifying monsters. Fleeing from these creatures, she reached a dead end. Just as her hope dwindled, a window appeared before her, informing her that she had acquired a passive skill. This skill allowed her to create a safe zone around her truck, marked by a red, trembling area. She took her hands off the steering wheel, trying to regain her composure. Suddenly, a cat appeared, seemingly out of thin air, and spoke to her, urging her to calm down and reassuring her of her safety within the zone. The cat explained it was her first passive skill acquisition, and it would activate whenever a dungeon was summoned. Wiping away her tears, June responded to the cat, expressing that she felt like she had aged 10 years in that moment. She then inquired about the dungeon floor they were currently on. The cat replied with a meow, informing her they were on the 4th floor. Relieved that she hadn't received a hunter class, June mused to herself, acknowledging that she had suspected something unusual when she received the dungeon store entry permit. She pulled out a piece of paper that read, "Dungeon store entry permit, personal transfer, and discard prohibited. Business is only possible in the dungeon." The cat, interrupting her thoughts, addressed her as master and suggested they begin preparing to open the store. She received a quest titled Preparation Before Opening, which instructed her to utilize her newly acquired skill. Upon requesting a menu, the freshest ingredients of the day materialized before her, completely free. Excitedly, she suggested a BLT sandwich, and the necessary ingredients promptly appeared. She marveled at the convenience of the skill. However, her excitement waned when a window popped up, notifying her that the quest would only be cleared once all ingredients were prepared. She protested, questioning if she would have to prepare all the bacon in advance, worrying it would dry out. Despite her protest, she resigned herself to the task, acknowledging she still had to do it since it was required. Before starting, she picked up the cat, Blackie, and gently placed him outside the kitchen, apologizing that the space was prohibited for animals. Blackie, slightly indignant, retorted that he was not an animal but a spirit. June countered that he was still a cat in his current form, and questioned which customer would want to eat food made in a kitchen with cat fur. Blackie retorted that there were no customers at the moment with a meow. June stood firm, insisting that even the fur that briefly stuck to her clothes was unacceptable, and reiterated that there was no entry to the kitchen for him. Following this, she began her preparations. She first washed the lettuce and tomatoes. Once cleaned, she put the eggs to boil with practiced precision. She then cut the tomatoes, and as she sliced, she glanced at Blackie, a soft smile forming on her lips. Taking a slice of tomato, she handed it to him, confessing that she had always wanted to raise a cat but her circumstances had never allowed it. Blackie began to lick the tomato and responded that spirits typically manifest according to their master's preferences, but then questioned her circumstances. She was about to explain when she was suddenly startled by a ding. Refocusing, she started toasting the bread for the BLT sandwiches. The aroma filled the air and she remarked on how good it smelled. Checking the eggs, she found they were perfectly boiled. She cut one egg in half and ate half of it, happiness filling her as she thought about how delicious it tasted. Next, she sliced the cheese and began cooking the bacon. The thought of cooking so much bacon in advance still bothered her a little, but her worries vanished when a window appeared, notifying her that she had completed the quest, even though the bacon wasn't finished cooking yet. She thought to herself that was great, realizing she didn't need to cook it all in advance after all since the garnish was done. With a satisfied ish, she spread the sauce thinly and added a generous amount of all the ingredients without restraint. Finally, she cut the sandwich in two and it was finished. After completing her preparations, a new window appeared before June, announcing her latest quest, last tutorial quest, first opening. Open your store and serve your first customer. Sell food to 10 customers. Reward item, lottery ticket. Meanwhile, nearby, a man was fighting off monsters. After dispatching them, he noticed June's food truck and mumbled to himself, wondering why he hadn't gotten a corrupted one, and expressing curiosity about it. As the man approached, June, noticing him, called out to him, asking if he was a customer, and offering to sell him a sandwich she had just made. The man, still suspicious, retorted, questioning if it was a new kind of monster. He drew his sword, preparing to attack, and shouted to inquire what type of new monster this was. June, startled and scared, shouted "Excuse me" before regaining some composure. More calmly, she stated that she didn't know what he was thinking, but it was absurd, though she could actually tell what he was thinking. She insisted she was a human, not a monster, genuinely human, and requested that he put his sword down, as it was scaring her. Still doubtful, the man questioned how he could believe her, suggesting she might be a monster capable of casting illusions. Jun replied that he was crossing a line, as a customer, and should watch what he said. She firmly stated she was not a monster, and questioned if he thought everything could be solved by lifting his sword. As she spoke, the man's stomach rumbled audibly, and he lowered his sword, pointing at the displayed sandwiches. He asked if they were real and not fake models. June confirmed they were real, asking if he couldn't smell their delicious aroma, and reiterating that they were sandwiches she had made herself. The man, still skeptical but intrigued, thought to himself that even if it was an illusion, he was willing to fall for it. He asked about the price. June told him it was 701. The man hesitated, prompting June to start rambling about why he should buy her sandwich, emphasizing how good they were. She pleaded, explaining she really needed to sell her sandwiches to at least 10 customers, and asked if he could please buy just one, pretty please, noting that he looked quite hungry. Seeing the man still in thought, she changed tactics, offering him a special deal for being her very first customer, reducing the price to 601. Finally, the man agreed to buy one, and June exclaimed, "Good choice." She took out a card reader and asked if he would like to pay by card or cash. The man, searching his jacket, replied that he didn't have a card or any cash on him right now. He pulled out something resembling a rock, and asked if it would work as payment. June hesitated but then agreed, stating that since he was her first customer, she would make a special exception for him. Holding the rock, she remarked on how light it was compared to its size, and questioned if it was actually a rock. The man responded that it depended on what one thought it was. As he left, he wished her good luck with her sales. Later, he took a bite of the sandwich and was overcome with joy and happiness by its delicious taste. After the man left, June felt a pang of sadness and turned to Blackie, lamenting that she had to barter with her very first customer. But thankfully, he still counted as a customer. Blackie, tapping the rock with her paw, remarked that she gave away a sandwich and received this rock in exchange with Anya. June sighed, acknowledging that she had given him a lot of special treatment because he was her first customer. To her surprise, Blackie responded that she thought that customer was the one who provided special treatment to them. Before June could respond, she heard a voice from a distance. The man had returned. As he arrived, he announced there was a problem with the sandwich. June's heart sank and she asked what he meant. With a broad smile, the man replied that the problem was that it was way too delicious, stating it was his first time eating such a fresh and delicious sandwich inside a dungeon. Relief washed over June, and she exclaimed that she was so glad he found it delicious. The man nodded, explaining that was why he had come back, to buy another one. Suspicious, June asked if he hadn't said he didn't have any money on him. The man searched his jacket and replied that he didn't have money, but he had a lot of other stuff, suggesting they barter. June echoed barter, perplexed. The man continued, reminding her that she had mentioned needing to sell to 10 customers. Confirming this, June agreed. Pulling out a gold coin, the man proposed a deal, stating he would be all 10 of those customers using this gold coin. June was confused and asked him to clarify. The man explained that if the same customer came 10 times, it would still count as 10 customers, as either way it would be the same amount of sales. He pointed out that if he bought one more sandwich right now, he would technically be her second customer, making a sale for her, and getting some food for himself? A win-win situation? And asked how about it. June accepted, and he was right. The progression bar of the quest went up to 2. This made her even more curious, and she asked if she sold him another one right now. Would it count as a new customer or be considered an add-on to his second order? The man agreed it was a good question worth trying. However, the progression bar didn't increase when he bought another sandwich, leading Jun to realize it was counted as an add-on to his order, considering him to be the same customer. Then, an idea struck her, and she asked if he could exit past that red line and then come back in. The man did as she requested, and thanks to his cooperation, June discovered something new. The red line, which she had thought was a simple boundary, was actually the entry line to her store. If a customer entered that space, bought her food, but didn't exit past the red line, any subsequent purchases would be considered add-on orders. Thanks to him, she was able to complete the quest. The man congratulated her on finishing her first quest, and she thanked him for all his help. He modestly replied it was nothing, mentioning he was in a hard spot because his food rations had just run out anyway, and he hoped she would be able to sell a lot. As the man was about to depart, June, in a dramatic fashion, called out, asking him to wait and what his name was. Later, while June was preparing more food, the man began to laugh. June, slightly annoyed, asked him to stop laughing, pointing out she had only asked for his name. He responded with a chuckle, explaining he was laughing because she had asked so dramatically, adding that at least he wouldn't be forgetting her name anytime soon, would he? Mr. Songja? June confirmed, saying, "That was right, Miss Min June," he replied with a nod. As June made egg rolls with bacon, the man commented that they looked delicious, but June corrected him, stating they weren't done yet, as Koreans couldn't have a meal without rice. She then pulled out some instant rice, explaining they were short on time and would be using instant rice. The man reassured her that instant rice was made for times when one was short on time. June started cutting seaweed and made small rice balls, placing the egg roll on top and tying them with seaweed. Announcing it was finished, the man remarked on how fast she worked with her hands. As he was about to leave, June handed him a thermos with soup, insisting he take it as well, explaining that one needed soup when having rice. The man thanked her for the meal and for giving him so many things, asking how he could return the thermos. June replied that he didn't have to return it, but as he left, he said he would return it to her next time anyway. Soon after, a window appeared indicating she had 30 minutes before closing. Looking at the sink, June thought she should be able to clean everything up in 30 minutes. While she was washing the dishes, Blackie asked why she had made him so much food for free, saying her service was too much with Anya. June responded that providing good service was a crucial strategy for a successful business, ensuring her reputation would be good and attract more customers later. Later, June and Blackie walked home together. Blackie, in a serious tone, stated that June had a lot of things to learn going forward. June, tilting her head in confusion, asked what she needed to learn. Blackie continued, explaining that she needed to learn about the abilities of awakened ones and the basics about dungeons. June nodded, acknowledging the truth in his words. Blackie then added, wondering how it was even possible how little she knew about dungeons, especially since they were all over the news these days. June sighed, explaining she avoided it on purpose because her parents were hunters who had passed away when she was very young. She had been raised by her grandmother, who always used to say, her voice trailed off as a memory flashed before her eyes, "June, you should live a normal life instead of dreaming of a world you don't fit in." As she opened the door to her home, she continued, explaining that her grandmother was the one who taught her how to cook, and that she was quite a famous Korean chef. Blackie gently said it was a common story, and that if it's not easy to successfully overcome a situation like hers, she shouldn't worry too much and take it step by step. Hearing Blackie's comforting words brought tears to June's eyes. Once they were back home, June cooked something using the leftovers and they both sat down to eat. June explained that it was pretty nice to be an awakened one, as she got to use ingredients for free to cook her meals, even though these were leftover ingredients from today's sales, she added with a laugh. Blackie remarked that she sure bounced back quickly, watching her with interest. June replied that food always cures anything. Her spirits lifted, and declared that tomorrow's breakfast would be a scrambled egg sandwich. Blackie couldn't help but think she really did have a lot to learn. As June watched Blackie eat, she thought she couldn't really get used to this. A cat holding food in its paw to eat was already strange, and it was even stranger when she thought of him as a spirit. She recalled the moment she had first awakened, when a window had appeared, and she had exclaimed, "What the hell is this? A tutorial? What's with these button options? I don't really have a choice, do I?" From behind, Blackie had chimed in that, of course, she had to do it because she was an awakened one now. Turning to Blackie, June had been both surprised and scared, stammering, "A cat possessed by a ghost?" Blackie had explained, "I'm a spirit meow. You gave me a name, Junes, so I manifested in this food truck. I'm a familiar to the awakened ones of the hidden classes." Ah. June, confused, asked if he meant she had named him. The cat had stood alongside the signs that read June's house, and seeing this, June had exclaimed, realizing it was basically her name, and decided to call him Blackie, finding it acceptable. Still, June had been happy that Blackie had manifested as a cute cat, and while patting him, she asked, "What's up, Naya?" Blackie had asked. "Nothing. I was just thinking that life is full of surprises. I can't believe I'm unawakened," June had replied, turning to the sink. Blackie had said he supposed so, wondering who would have expected this many dishes to pile up, with Anya, and grumbling about why spirits couldn't help out in moments like these. June washed the dishes. When she was done, Blackie told her that first, he would teach her how to use the hunter's market, with Anya, explaining that she could use it to sell and buy items that she needed. June asked if she could probably sell what that guy gave her, referring to the rock, there. June, taking out the gold coin, asked Blackie if she could sell it there. Blackie confirmed, "Yes, Nia." As June explored the market, she discovered the coin was valued at 1,000,000 won. She exclaimed that Songjuk must be insane to have paid 1,000,000 won for a single sandwich. Putting the coin up for sale, June then questioned if she had just scammed someone. Blackie replied that the inside of the dungeon was rough and unrelenting, so perhaps it wasn't a scam. He suggested that Songjuk might have considered her sandwich a great source of energy, thus a worthy investment. It wasn't long before the coin sold, surprising June as notifications began to appear. A window popped up asking if she wanted to link her bank account. Blackie explained that when she sold or bought an item, everything would be converted into points on the hunter's market, and by connecting her bank account, she could freely deposit and withdraw money. June, clicking yes, asked if that meant when she made sales in the dungeon, she could use hunter's market points as currency. Blackie confirmed that was true. After linking her bank account, a new window appeared, asking if she wanted to withdraw all the money with a 1% tax. June clicked yes and received a message informing her that 8,910,000 won had been deposited from the hunter's market. Wondering aloud if this was some type of in-game money or a prank, she questioned the reality of it. Blackie suggested that if she didn't believe it, she could go to the bank and check for herself. A thought struck June, wondering if the rock, the Gatstone, was also special. Looking it up, a window appeared, revealing it was the Gatstone of the Unknown, a stone that could open a gate allowing travel to designated desert locations within the dungeon. Seeing this, June looked up Songjuk and discovered he was the leader of the Azure Guild and ranked #1 in Korea and 2nd in the world. June reflected that things already felt weird even though it was only her first day in the dungeon. Not only had she sold her sandwiches at a ridiculous price to Korea's #1 rank, but she had also sold each for a gold coin worth 1,000,000 won each. Recalling memories of giving him a good deal, she thought she probably seemed super duper arrogant. The deal they made was strange to begin with. Why would a top ranker make a deal with a newbie and give away extremely valuable items at that? What if this rank 1 started telling people that she was a business that ripped off their customers? Would she be able to continue doing business in the dungeon? Standing up abruptly, June declared to Blackie that she had to meet Songjuk again. Blackie, confused, asked what she was talking about. Suddenly, June stated she had to meet him and beg for forgiveness. Starting by returning this money to him, she decided this was for her store and her future the next morning. When she opened the fridge, June saw that the ingredients she had stored for later use were gone. Blackie suggested she read the still description each day, realizing they disappeared once the day had passed. June read aloud, confirming this and expressing slight disappointment. Blackie, sitting on top of the fridge, reassured her not to be disappointed as the ingredients for today would appear soon. June, perplexed, asked Blackie as a spirit why he was sitting on top of the fridge like a real cat. Blackie responded that he was starting to get used to this form. Naya, and suggested it was also time for her to start getting used to the dungeon and the community of the awakened ones. Naya. Before opening her store, June studied the dungeon, the skills and systems she would need going forward. She noticed something flickering on and off and remembered the lottery ticket she had been given as a reward for finishing the previous quest. Deciding to open it, a chest appeared on her desk. Blackie remarked it was the reward for a beginner quest, so she shouldn't hope for too much, Naya. As she opened the chest, June obtained a unique item, a kitchen towel that never gets dirty. Reading the item description, she learned it did not get dirty no matter how dirty the object she was cleaning, and it remained clean even if it was not washed. The description also revealed 2 new effects: what was cleaned would shine, and everything dirty would be returned back to its original clean form. Testing the object, June used the towel to clean a pan, and exclaimed in amazement that it really didn't get dirty, no matter what she cleaned with it. Noting she had just cleaned bacon oil with it and it was still clean, she declared it wasn't just a towel, but an invincible towel, delighted. For about an hour she cleaned the kitchen, rambling about how cool the towel was. Then she decided it was time to invest the skill points she had gained. She thought she should delay leveling up the Where the Wheel Rolls skill, reasoning that this skill would randomly take her to a place in the dungeon she had already been to before. It would be best to visit as many places as possible first, then use it when she had lots of options for locations to do business in. Since the only floor of the dungeon she had visited was the 4th floor, she thought leveling up this skill would do nothing but bring her business down. As her passive skills would automatically increase when she leveled up her main class, June decided the skill she needed to focus on leveling up immediately was the one that reduced the dungeon terrain effects by 30% and allowed her to become aware of traps within the dungeon. Seeing this, Blackie remarked that was a good choice. AI June responded that, as expected, the driver's license skill went first since it was the key to starting a food truck business. Since June had ensured the safety of her customers, she thought she could now focus on improving their comfort. She then purchased some chairs and a table to create a resting area within the dungeon. Thanks to one of her skills, she could establish a space within the safe zone where customers could sit and eat comfortably. June reflected on her first day's earnings, noting that expenses like these were no problem, and she silently thanked Sangju for his generous patronage. Before starting her second day of business, she decided that visiting many different locations would be beneficial, planning to set up her food truck for approximately 2 hours at each spot. She activated the Where the Wheel Rolls skill, and the second day of June's food truck venture began. Upon being teleported to a new dungeon location, she inquired about the place. A window appeared, informing her that she was in the Mandak Swamplands, Dungeon Floor 3. Consulting her notes, she realized this was an unexplored zone. As she opened the door and stepped outside, she exclaimed in surprise, wondering if the Wheel Rolls skill only transported her to unexplored areas. Blackie clarified that the 4th floor they had visited yesterday was an explored zone, but simply wasn't very populated. After that, she commenced preparing food for the day. Today's menu consisted of seaweed soup and spicy stir-fried pork, dishes that took her considerably longer to prepare. While cooking, she commented that she was relieved there were no customers today. After a while, the food was ready, and suddenly, out of nowhere, she heard a voice saying, "Looks yummy." Startled, she asked Blackie when he had transformed back into the truck. Blackie responded by questioning if him staying in cat form while she cooked was bothersome. June sighed, mentioning she was going to offer him some food, but guessed he couldn't eat in that form. Hearing this, Blackie quickly shifted back into his cat form. June gave him some food, and Blackie was filled with joy by the delicious taste, exclaiming that it was fantastic, happily. A bit later, Blackie remarked that he had been thinking about it yesterday and noted that Master had very quick hands. June responded that she felt more motivated because the ingredients arrived in such large batches. Suddenly, a window appeared, notifying her that they would soon be teleported to a new location. Seeing this, June remarked that it was already time to move on to the next area, adding that it actually worked out better as this was an unexplored zone anyway, and it was preferable to make sales in more crowded areas. However, she was unlucky with this teleportation, as she was sent to a very cold place. Trembling from the cold, a window appeared, informing her that she was in the ancient ice peak of the Snow People, Dungeon Floor 4, an explored area. She turned on all the stoves to try and heat the place, but they didn't provide much warmth. an idea came to her that something from the hunter's market might help. Searching the market, she found a portable mini furnace with +70 freezing resistance. She bought it immediately, turned it on, and the food truck quickly warmed up. Even at this point, Min-jun remained blissfully unaware of her biggest tragedy to come. 1 month into her awakening, after the food truck's opening, not a single customer had shown up. She sat in a chair waiting for customers, sighing that today's sales were ruined again, she muttered. She had eagerly woken up at the crack of dawn to prepare food for the past month. Even though the food truck only went to unexplored areas, and despite using ingredients that disappeared once the day ended, she had consistently prepared 2 to 3 menus for potential customers. But those menus never had a chance to shine. Feeling depressed, she said to Blackie, asking what he thought she had felt after her awakening. She confided that she had never felt happy since becoming awakened, not even once. The dungeon she had to enter because of her involuntary awakening was already too big of a challenge for her. But lately, she had started to feel a sense of purpose, as she knew the only consumables one could bring into dungeons were dried fish, water, or potions, meaning she could offer people unique help. So, she had searched for all kinds of things she could do in the dungeons, but the world wasn't easy on her at all. She looked at her hand and began to cry, realizing that she was the only one who could cook and serve food in the dungeons, and couldn't even ask others for help. Blackie, hearing her words, softly said he was sorry, adding that he had always observed Master trying her hardest, but there wasn't much he could do to help us himself, Naya. Suddenly, a window appeared, informing her that she would be teleported to the next location. Seeing this, she wiped her tears and said to Blackie that even so, she was never lonely, all because he was there with her. While preparing for teleportation, Blackie mumbled that going forward, there were bound to be many more people in need of her help, noting that she had practically taken one thing away from this spiteful place already. As she was teleported, she stepped outside, and a window appeared, telling her she was in Dungeon Floor 2. Valley of Despair. She was very happy about this. A man came from behind and said in surprise if this was actually a food truck and if he was dreaming. Seeing this man made her even happier. She began to tell him that it wasn't a dream. Firstly, she was a human, not some shape-shifting monster, and also not an illusion, and asked if he wasn't hungry as it was quite late. The man responded that yes, that was actually the reason he had come by. June told him to please help himself to a meal before moving on. As she began to prepare a meal, it didn't take her long to serve him a katsudon. As he took a bite, tears came to his eyes. He was overjoyed by this delicious meal, stating he had never eaten something so delicious in a dungeon. A plate of perfectly cooked fish, its skin crackling with crispness and the meat within meltingly tender, became his entire world in that moment. Each bite was a symphony of texture and flavor, a stark contrast to the harsh realities of his dungeon delving, and a silent exclamation of delicious echoed in his mind, a rare and precious joy. He ate with unrestrained pleasure, the sound of his contented chewing filling the cavernous space, until a gentle voice broke through his reverie. Min Ji-yeon, the food truck proprietor, stood beside him, a concerned question in her eyes, asking if everything was all right. Reassured her, a genuine smile lighting his face as he confessed his sheer happiness, explaining the profound delight of real food after days of meager sustenance. Min Ji-yeon, amused and touched by his fervent enjoyment, simply advised him to savor each bite, a quiet satisfaction blooming within her as she witnessed such genuine appreciation for her unlikely dungeon fare. Unseen by them, in the vast digital ether connecting players, whispers of a bizarre phenomenon were spreading. Messages flashed across in-game chat channels, queries about a food truck inexplicably located within the dungeon, alongside bewildered reports of a fox site. Players confirmed the improbable truth: a food truck, serving surprisingly delicious food for dungeon coins, an anomaly that sparked both humor and confusion. The strangeness escalated with talk of disappearing companions and oversized food bowls, culminating in the shared realization that the food truck, and perhaps the entire experience, was an illusion, a fleeting mirage in the harsh digital landscape. The scene shifted abruptly to the sterile confines of an office, where Song Jin, now removed from the dungeon's grime, stood overlooking the city, his thoughts far from the cityscape. He turned to John Hyun, his guildmate and leader, questioning his progress on a more pressing matter, finding the missing food truck driver, Min Ji-yeon Tutty. John Hyun confessed his struggles, the bulletin board overflowing with unanswered requests, hinting at the unusual nature of the recruitment. Song Jin's suspicion sharpened, noticing the peculiar notes left on the board in John Hyun's oddly specific recruitment changes, accusing him of acting suspiciously. The missing woman, Song Jin explained, was Min Jae-hoon, the very food truck driver, vanished for 20 days, and their search hinged on a simple ring. Despite John Hyun's worried pronouncements of a red spider dungeon phenomenon and potential danger linked to Min Ji-yoon's skills, Song Jin remained unfazed, agreeing to search for her with a casual dismissiveness that belied the gravity of the situation. Relief washed over John Hyun, who urged Song Jin to handle the situation delicately. Later, a simple thermos became the focal point, John Hyun's internal monologue filled with urgency to return it quickly. Across town, Min Ji-in echoed the sentiment, her own desire to return the thermos intertwined with the cryptic phrase "Gatestone," hinting at a deeper significance. The narrative crescendoed into a dramatic tableau of grasping hands reaching for the thermos, a hushed voice revealing its true value. An item coveted even by the nation's top guild, a treasure hidden within the guise of an ordinary container, the object of intense desire and hidden agendas. Min Ji-in, still weak in bed, wrestled with the weight of the thermos and its perilous contents, recalling her initial mercenary plan to auction the dangerous artifact, a scheme derailed by the unwelcome intrusion of the guild into her personal affairs. A fierce protectiveness ignited within her. She wouldn't let anyone uncover her secrets. The thermos power hidden deep within the dungeon was hers to control. Her thoughts were interrupted by Kat's voice, inquired about Min Ji-eun's health as a soft question. She quickly followed by a self-deprecating mention of her own overwork and minor fever, a subtle shift of focus away from her veiled condition. A digital ripple then fractured the air, the urgent announcement of rank 1 Songju Hyuk's appearance in Gyeonggi province exploding into their awareness, a server-wide bulletin proclaiming a monumental event. A legendary player descending into the 5th floor. The implications of which reverberated through the game, underscored by the historical note that such a feat had been unmatched for 28 years. Ji-in, now seemingly recovered, scrolled through news updates on her tablet, her brow furrowed with concern as she read about the impending 5th floor raid, news outlets clamoring for details and progress reports. On screen, a news anchor's pronouncements echoed her own unease, emphasizing the gravity of the 5th floor challenge, a matter too significant for any single guild to control. Relaxing back against her pillows, Ji-in's thoughts drifted to her recent encounter with Song Jo-hyuk. On the 4th floor, a meeting that now took on a new significance in light of the escalating raid preparations. She mused on the strangeness of it all, recalling encountering a novice hunter fresh from tutorial quests even on the 4th floor, a level typically reserved for mid-tier players. A sudden realization dawned on her, a chilling understanding that Song Jo-hyuk, despite his seemingly guileless demeanor, might have been more perceptive than she'd initially assumed, potentially recognizing the subtle nuances of her skills. During their brief chance encounter on the dungeon's 4th floor, Min Ji-in, still taking in her surroundings, couldn't shake the feeling of having infiltrated a fortress, marveling at the lax security that allowed her entry with just a fabricated identity, a fake name, number, voice, an ID seemingly sufficient to bypass the guardians of Korea's strongest guild. Lost in thought and consulting a directory for Song Jo-hyuk's office, her muttered query was abruptly cut short by a voice from behind, sharp and demanding. "What are you doing here?" Min Ji-eun startled violently, a surprised gasp escaping her lips, a blush rising as she turned to face her interrogator. A man of imposing height, dwarfing her own frame, a towering figure who immediately demanded, What's your height?" And his sheer size was undeniable, a caption highlighting over 2 meters, underscoring his intimidating presence as he scrutinized her, remarking he hadn't seen her before, his voice trailing off in contemplation. Min Ji-in, flustered but recalling her mission, struggled to reconcile the detailed description of her target with this giant before her, questioning the accuracy of the intel she'd been given. The tall man's gaze intensified, his questions direct and probing. "Is your name Min Ji-hoon? How old are you, and are you 21? His precision caught Min Ji-hoon off guard. She realized with dawning embarrassment that her deception was crumbling. How does he know my real name? She wondered, panic rising. Forcing a nervous smile, a weak attempt at composure, Min Ji-hoon's facade was instantly dismantled by the man's blunt assessment. As if on cue, a virtual bulletin board materialized in their vision. The Hunter Community Forum, ablaze with chatter about Kim Sung-jin, debating his intellect, speculating about his appearance and personal life, and even sharing stolen images. The comments ranging from superficial observations on his looks to invasive questions about his age and relationships, painting a disturbing picture of unwanted online scrutiny. Min Ji-hoon, reeling from this digital intrusion and the towering man's interrogation, stammered at her age, 21, her smile strained and awkward. Before attempting to regain some footing by asking him directly, "Who are you?" His annoyed retort, "Why should I answer?" immediately silenced her. Ignoring her discomfort, he continued his interrogation. Min Jeon's mind reeled, a chilling realization dawning. This fearsome giant was reciting her personal information, a terrifying breach of privacy that sent icy tendrils of unease through her. Then, Sun Ji-hyuk's next question amplified the bizarre encounter. His booming voice laced with bewildered curiosity as he asked directly, "Then perhaps, do you also run a food truck in the dungeon?" The question hung in the air, a surreal and nonsensical inquiry that pushed Min Ji-yoon's already frayed nerves to their breaking point. A stark text box declared the truth. Ji-yoon's mental state had already reached its limit. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled, and with a soft thud that echoed in the sudden silence, Ji-yoon collapsed onto the floor. Song Ju-hyuk, instantly alarmed, loomed over her fallen form, his massive features etched with a mixture of concern and utter bewilderment. "What's wrong?" he exclaimed, his voice now laced with genuine worry, utterly lost in the face of this unexpected crisis. Kneeling awkwardly beside the unconscious woman, Song Jo-hyuk's panicked voice resonated with confusion. "What did I do?" His immense size, moments ago intimidating, now seemed to amplify his helplessness. "Hey, snap out of it," he urged, leaning closer, his concern deepening as Ji-hoon remained unresponsive. The tense silence following Ji-hoon's collapse shattered with a sudden burst of boisterous laughter, echoing from down the hallway. A jarringly incongruous sound that bounced off the polished surfaces. A man emerged, a smirk playing on his lips, clutching his stomach as if seized by mirth, feigning innocence as he gasped, "My stomach hurts." While his blatantly contradicted his act, "So, you threatened her?" His jovial facade was met with the withering glare of another man, his face flushed with exasperation, who snapped, "Hey, what have you been listening to this whole time?" His arms crossed defensively, chest puffed out in irritation. He clearly disapproved of the first man's amusement. "I just asked because she seemed like the person I was looking for." As if intense interrogation of a trembling cleaner was a reasonable approach. The second man's exasperation deepened, retorting with thinly veiled accusation. "You pried into her personal information with that face," the unspoken implication hanging heavy in the air. Sung Ju-hyuk's intimidating presence was hardly conducive to casual inquiry. Unfazed, Song Ju-hyuk shrugged, deflecting blame with practiced ease. "I can't do anything about my face. It's always like this," then added with a touch of self-justification. "That was the information you gave me. I was just confirming it." The second man, relenting slightly, sighed. Okay. I get it," but his tone remained firm as he issued a warning anyway. "Since you're my benefactor, don't scare her twice and just leave quickly." Revealing a complex dynamic of obligation and concern for the distressed woman. Song Ju-hyuk, with a hint of arrogance, retorted, "Hey, where else can you find such a nice person like me?" Oblivious to the gaping chasm between his self-perception and reality. The second man, grabbing Song Ju-hyuk by the shoulder and steering him away, deadpan, "But you don't look nice. You really lack self-awareness." A blunt assessment that finally pierced Song Ju-hyuk's facade, eliciting an offended, "That's rude," as he was ushered away with a dismissive, "Anyway, get out, quickly." As Song Ju-hyuk retreated, a flicker of something akin to thoughtfulness crossed his features, a quiet murmur escaping his lips. "You remembered my name," a strangely touched reaction to a fleeting detail in this bizarre encounter. Meanwhile, in the aftermath of the unsettling confrontation, Ji-yoon stirred, waking with a sudden gasp, her eyes wide with lingering fear as if the towering figure still loomed over her. "Yes, it's me," Jo-hyuk reassured her, his touch gentle as he checked for injuries, concern etched on his face. "Are you feeling any pain?" Min Ji-yoon blinked, still piecing together the fragmented memories. Her gaze then fell upon a table laden with fast food, a comforting, unexpected sight amidst the lingering tension. Fried chicken, fries, dipping sauces, a feast materialized from nowhere. His voice broke the quiet, laced with mild surprise. "I thought you only cooked chicken, but you also do deliveries." Seonjin chuckled, explaining his foresight. "I was thinking into the future. I felt bad when the person who brought me food was hungry, so I prepared it before that, offering the meal with a gesture of generosity." Min Ji-yeon, touched, accepted and began eating, enjoying a bite of crispy fried chicken. Then Min Ji-yeon, feeling restored by the meal and his kindness, expressed profound gratitude, stating she thought she would die, but due to him she lived, but then questioned why he had brought her there. The conversation took a more serious turn as Song Jin delved into the core of their dilemma, inquiring about the nature of Minji's skill, specifically her ability to manipulate gates. She clarified, once again, the limitations of her power, emphasizing its random, uncontrollable nature and dispelling any notion of free or unlimited access to dungeons. June sitting tensely on a bed, her hands fidgeting nervously. The young man's inner thoughts are revealed as he assessed the situation, concluding, I see. So, it's random. June, with wide, surprised eyes, questions the existence of something. The young man, holding chopsticks in a disposable container, explains it's a recently introduced policy to prevent dungeon crimes. He clarifies that at the dungeon entrance, they have to enter with a skill. Visibly impressed, the woman gasps and exclaims with animated enthusiasm and laughter that it's truly impressive. She clutches her hands to her chest, her eyes bright with excitement. The young man then asks if she's sold much food in the dungeon since they met. June, with her hands near her face, playfully redirects him to focus, before cheerfully confirming, yes. She adds in a bright and optimistic tone that freshly fried food tastes the best. The scene changes to show the young man eating a fried item with chopsticks. She remarks that she had brought chicken, planning to sell it from her food truck. He observes, with a hint of fascination, how her expression changes when she talks about cooking, finding her quite strange. The young man sitting at a table carefully wiping a large glowing gem with a cloth. Addressing June, he speaks with curiosity. The gem shines brilliantly, emphasizing its unique nature. June responds encouragingly and positively, stating that he is doing something unique. She acknowledges his special ability, pausing before agreeing that it is true, admitting to herself that hearing it from someone else makes her a little shy. The young man, thoughtfully looking at the gem, inquires if it's a growth-type passive skill. June looks up in surprise as he smiles. With a smile, the young man gently places the gleaming gem in June's hand, holding it there for a moment. He questions her understanding and asks why she thinks he gave her this gate stone, pointing out the location, the 5th floor. He was shocked, nervously questioning if she has been to the unexplored 5th floor dungeon. June glances away, dismissively asking what he is talking about. The scene then shows notes outlining June's food truck operation plan, which includes business on levels 1 and 2, after leveling up and expanding to Area 3 on the 3rd floor. Narration reveals that receiving a customer on the 4th floor had disrupted her plan, indicating her carefully laid plans were thrown off course by this unexpected event. Having heard June's plan, the young man asks her what she intends to do. With determination, June replies that she will only ask Mr. Song Juyuk for help. Wearing a cap and with a black cat nearby, she addresses an unseen question about the owner's honesty, smiling to herself and deciding it's all right to mix in some truth. June explains that her ability to randomly reach the 4th floor is due to a special class skill. She clarifies its limitation, stating it only works in dungeons where the boss has been defeated, internally strategizing that they won't realize she can access dungeons above the 4th floor. The young man, looking concerned, realizes something and states more as an observation that she has been to the 5th floor. He crosses his arms and looks away. Standing up, the young man begins to say what he wants to convey. He looks towards her. She crouches down as he asks what she is doing right now. The young man nervously stammers, just. Jin bows deeply, asking with delight, could you spare me? Suddenly another young woman waves from behind a wall corner, calling out, hey, Guildmaster! This other young woman hands the young man an envelope, saying it's the document he requested. Surprised, the young man says no, that's... As she falls to the floor. Pointing a finger at her, he accuses him of being petty. June protests that it's not like that, while he instructs the other young woman to leave the document and leave, promising to explain later. The young woman angrily questions why he's pushing people. The scene shifts to Jun kneeling on the floor, hand outstretched towards the young man, who recoils slightly. She exclaims she thought he was going to kill her for lying, her face showing relief mixed with lingering fear. Standing over her, the young man reassures her he's not scary and tells her to calm down. He offers tea as their conversation seems lengthy. Still on the floor, June responds, slightly flustered, that she'll have black coffee. The young man looks surprised. He then questions if she's the same person who is just begging for her life, pointing out her sudden change in demeanor. June nervously smiles, replying that he said he wouldn't kill her. The young man is silent for a moment. The young man, regaining his composure, sits up. He pours himself a cup of coffee and asks her, "Can you tell me about the 5th floor dungeon?" He sets a cup of coffee on the table before her, mentioning the dungeon she spoke of. It's a dungeon called Resting Place of the Corrupted Fire Spirit King. So there was a fire attribute field dungeon in the unexplored area. He elaborates, "I heard there's such a place on the 5th floor, but I don't know the exact location." He expresses his own frustration, thinking, if I wander around the vast 5th floor, I might eventually find it. She contemplates internally if she should tell him the truth. The young man, noticing her interest, asks, "What about it?" Shun, after a brief hesitation, reveals a crucial piece of information. "It's in the right area of Ariadne's scale," she states, referring to a specific landmark or region within the dungeon. The young man clarifies, "It's not from the skill." The young man thanks her, his tone appreciative. "Thanks for the good information. This will make it easier to prepare for the subjugation," he says, acknowledging the value of her knowledge. June then asks out of curiosity, "Why do hunters bother to subjugate dangerous, unexplored dungeons?" She expresses confusion, not understanding why they constantly risk death exploring dungeons. Raising his head, he explains that without subjugation, rifts occur, asking if she remembers the rift dungeon from 20 years ago, stating no one wants a repeat of that tragedy. Thoughtful for a moment, June agrees it's true. A shattered picture frame is shown on the floor, the glass broken, revealing obscured figures within, hinting at past tragedy. Narration reveals that her parents also died because of that rift dungeon. With an earnest expression, the young man approaches June, holding out a large brown envelope, asking if it's a proposal. Startled, June takes the envelope, eyes wide with surprise. Opening it, she sees a formal guild membership contract, detailing her responsibilities and obligations to the Chong Mayan Guild. Reading the contract with enthusiasm, June asks if he is truly recruiting her into the guild. The young man, with a slight smile, confirms his intention, stating he's been considering it since they first met, implying it was a long thought-out decision. He points to the bottom of the contract, suggesting she write down any additional requests. Hesitantly, June responds, okay, sighing that it's so sudden. Suddenly she exclaims in shock, "What?" Her eyes widen as she realizes the financial implications of the contract, the scene visually representing the significant sum of money involved. The young man casually asks if 10 billion won is too little, then suggests 15 billion, his nonchalant tone contrasting with the enormous sum, making it sound almost like a game. Completely flustered, June exclaims why he's talking about such huge sums like game currency, and tells him to stop talking about money. He pauses and, sensing her confusion, suggests they talk about the dungeon first, attempting to redirect the conversation to a less overwhelming topic. The young man continues explaining the complexities of the dungeon, stating its end is still unknown. He elaborates that when all areas are secured, evidence emerges of the entire zone being opened, describing a unique feature, a distinction between day and night. The scene visually contrasts a dark, starry forest night with a bright, sunlit cityscape. Surprised, June exclaims, "Wow! I thought it was just a map attribute." Clarifying her misunderstanding, she says she thought dungeon floors were clearly separated, with a visual of a towering structure representing dungeon floors. The young man corrects her, explaining exploration is possible regardless of floor completion, even if areas on each floor aren't fully secured. That's why, he says, many undiscovered areas remain on the 3rd floor. June playfully chides him, mentioning their luck in quickly finding the 4th floor dungeon from the 3rd, and jokingly asks how unlucky someone could be. A map appears, showing a red line marked as the shortest route to the next floor, with narration that she used this route alone to the 4th floor this time. June asks how long it takes to travel from the 1st to the 4th floor. He replies about a week one way, so 2 weeks round trip, adding this hunt is expected to take about 20 days round trip. June interrupts, acknowledging the long journey's difficulty for her. The young man clarifies that besides fighting monsters, skilled rankers will protect her 24/7. Raising her hand in protest, June insists that's not the issue. Confused, he asks what is. Seriously, June reveals her strength stat is 5. She admits her physical limitations with self-deprecation, saying she lacks the confidence to walk for 10 days, revealing a vulnerability beneath her previous enthusiasm and unique skills. The young man, visibly taken aback by June's admission, looks at her with surprise and slight concern. He questions, his expression a mix of disbelief and amusement. June, did I force you to join the guild too much? To the point where you had to lie, June, with a small cartoonish blush, responds, she wishes it was a lie too. She sighs softly, her expression suggesting a mix of embarrassment and resignation. The young man, attempting to lighten the mood, chuckles softly. She then elaborates on the surprising nature of her low strength stat, lower than a non-awakened civilian. Ha! He then covers his mouth, trying to suppress a laugh. Snickers sorry. He knows he shouldn't laugh. She reassures him that her low strength stat is not a barrier. She wasn't originally like this, but she became this way after awakening. He then proposes a solution. They can solve that by giving you various buffs, June. Any other questions? June, reassured by his words, composes herself and asks a practical question regarding the raid. How many people are in the raid team? The young man answers, providing details about the scale of the operation. They are thinking about 30 to 50 people for this raid. She then acknowledges the logistical challenges of such a large group, 3 meals a day for 50 people. It's not a small amount of cooking or cleaning, but the conditions seem pretty good. June, now seriously considering the contract, looks down at the document in her hands, her expression thoughtful. She then asks a final pointed question, her voice curious and slightly hesitant. Juliuk, can I borrow your pen for a moment? The young man, intrigued by her request, looks at her expectantly. He poses a crucial question about the contract. Why is the renewal period only 1 year in Clause 4? June then answers her own question, explaining her motivations and long-term goals. She reveals with a touch of wistfulness, her dream was originally to grow her business and eventually open a franchise. But due to an unintended awakening, a montage of images flashes, showing June working diligently at her food truck, participating in a third youth support project, and Ope's food truck contest, highlighting her entrepreneurial spirit. Her expression turns slightly melancholic as she continues. She had to give up her dream because she could only do business inside the dungeon. There might come a time when she no longer wants to enter the dungeon. She is a non-combat type awakener. The young man, listening intently, nods and understands it. He sees, that makes sense, he acknowledges, recognizing the validity of her concerns. She then offers a reassuring promise. Of course, the renewal priority will always be given to the Mayhem Guild. She promises June, shaking hands with the young man, seals their agreement with a bright, hopeful smile. The young man, reciprocating her enthusiasm, exclaims, "Thank you, June." He hopes they can work together for a long time. He releases her hand, stepping back slightly, and adds with a business-like tone, "He will prepare a proper contract, so can she come back tomorrow?" He also has a guild alliance meeting soon. June, understanding the need for formality and his busy schedule, readily agrees. Ah, yes. She has stayed too long. As June prepares to leave, the young man remembers something else and says, "Oh, and this." He picks up a water bottle and hands it to June. He explains, with a warm smile, it went well with the egg sushi she made at that time. Thanks to her, he enjoyed the meal. June, touched by his thoughtfulness and remembering their first meeting, blushes slightly and replies with a genuine smile. She is glad he enjoyed it. June accepts the water bottle, her expression now one of confident determination. She thinks to herself, so she has decided to join the Mayhem Guild. She then acknowledges her limitations. Musing, since she is a non-combat type awakener, she is almost like a civilian compared to the hunters. Right. She then considers the potential challenges of her new role within the guild and thinks, there are so many problematic civilians, but only hunters are in the dungeon. June's thoughts turn to the practicalities of her new job, particularly the potential dangers she might face within the dungeon environment. She worries if hunters cause trouble in her shop, she can't stop them. If they kick her truck or flip tables, she doesn't have the strength to stop them. Despite these anxieties, Blackie acknowledges the logic of the young man's reassurances, concluding, right, what the owner said makes sense. But Blackie's thoughts take a slightly different turn as Kat considers the implications of her decision. It was a mistake to mention the location of the 5th floor dungeon, she realizes, a flicker of regret crossing her face. June, conveying her disapproval, she just wanted to tell them, because what if they get lost with a dungeon right next to her? That's the hunter's problem. Blackie's words are sharp and accusatory, highlighting the potential dangers she might face. June, looking at Blackie, defends her decision, her voice firm but gentle. No, Blackie, it's their duty to prevent dungeon cracks. She then looks at a framed photo of a couple, presumably her parents, and acknowledges the personal significance of her actions. Even so, being bound by a contract to go whenever the guild calls isn't good. Blackie, unconvinced, retorts with a final dismissive "You naive fool." Blackie then softens slightly, its tone becoming more conciliatory. They are in a lifelong contract too. But it's not bad. Blackie, despite its initial disapproval, seems to accept June's decision, offering a grudging acceptance of their shared fate. June, looking down at Blackie with a gentle smile, asks, "Min Blackie, are you really upset?" Her voice is soft and affectionate, seeking to reassure her feline companion. June, sitting at a table with papers spread before her, apologizes to Blackie, her black cat. She is sorry, but she couldn't help it because of the situation. She looks at Blackie expectantly. Blackie, with his back turned, seems unconvinced. June, in an attempt to appease him, asks, "Want some food?" One of Blackie's ears perks up. Blackie turns his head slightly, a skeptical hump escaping him. "If you think you can appease him with food, you're gravely mistaken," he retorts, his tone suggesting a playful, yet still annoyed, demeanor. June, undeterred, promises she will make something delicious for you. She begins preparing food, chopping ingredients with practiced skill. She places some pre-cooked chicken and canned tuna into a strainer. She puts both hands on her hips and smiles, holding Blackie. "Hey, wait a bit longer," she says. Blackie, in a grumpy tone, replies, "Fine." June is seen cooking, placing a strainer in a pot over a pan of rice. "It's almost done, so just wait a moment," she reassures him. She empties the chicken in the strainer into the pan. June adds liquid to a bubbling pot of rice and vegetables. "This is definitely the highlight of today's menu," she declares with enthusiasm. Adding the egg, she exclaims, her voice filled with excitement. Finally, she presents the finished dish, a steaming bowl of porridge with colorful vegetables and chunks of meat. "Tonight's dinner, tuna egg porridge," she announces with a flourish. June sits at a table, a bowl of porridge and a plate of what looks like fried chicken before her. Blackie sits on the table as well, facing her. She apologizes, her expression sincere. "Blackie, she is sorry about earlier. She didn't think it through." She acknowledges the potential danger of her actions. The information she gives could be important confidential information in the hunter world. Blackie, still appearing somewhat grumpy, responds, "If you realize that, be careful from now on." June, taking a spoonful of porridge, nods in agreement. "Yeah, she will." She takes a bite, her eyes widening in appreciation, emphasizing the simple pleasure of the meal. Food has a really amazing power. It can restore relationships and bring simple joys to their repetitive daily lives. June savors the porridge, a contented expression on her face. She thinks with satisfaction it turned out delicious. June then contemplates her future within the guild, her thoughts filled with a mix of anticipation and resolve. What dishes can be practical without being too fancy? The simple joy in the dungeon. I'm kept awake by the thought of making it come true with my own hands. This won't be easy despite the challenges ahead. June is clearly energized and motivated by the prospect of bringing comfort and joy through her cooking to the hunters in the dungeons.